Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, meanwhile, is meeting with Israeli President Herzog right now in Tel Aviv. We're going to take you there live. He met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the nation's war cabinet earlier. Now, tomorrow he's visiting Jordan for meetings with the King of Jordan and other regional partners. Blinken reportedly expected to raise the issue of a potential pause in fighting during his trip, which is something President Biden has called for, and he did so again earlier this week. Joining me right now is former Navy SEAL combat veteran, former Homeland Security Division Director and Virginia congressional candidate, Cameron Hamilton. Cameron, thanks very much for being here. Assess the situation as you see it.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. We see a calamity of many different issues all unfolding on the American stage right now. It's really quite an embarrassment. What we see really is a crisis of leadership in this country. We have a president, we have a current administration that is not projecting the appropriate degree of strength and resolve to handle a lot of these complicated international affairs. So I think the American people are right to be distrustful and right to be frustrated with the direction that this country is going, simply because we seem to lack leadership that has the appropriate nature and abilities to lead effectively with these different matters. Instability in Israel. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yep. Especially right now where we saw this coming, right? As soon as Israel was attacked, so many people were saying Israel has the right to defend itself. Israel has the right to defend itself, knowing that very soon the narrative would change, that as soon as Israel started to defend itself, that suddenly Israel was the bad guy here. And that's what we're seeing, and Biden pushing for a ceasefire after they were already attacked.
Again, we had a ceasefire on October 6th. So the argument that we need an additional ceasefire before is just simply not relevant. It's not appropriate. Israel didn't ask for this conflict. Israel didn't want this conflict, but they are facing this challenge nonetheless with the resources and the tools that they have that they know how to do very well and effectively. So I would say that the arguments now presented about additional ceasefire, we should really put that sentiment and question back on Hamas. Are they asking for a ceasefire? Are they willing to negotiate with Western powers to surrender hostages that they've taken and captured? And until that happens, in my argument, would be that Israel should push forward with their operations and their planning exactly as they've been doing.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you've got China already taking Israel off of their online map. Okay, right exactly with what Hamas wants to do, wipe Israel off the map. What a moment in time this is, and has been in the last 2.5 years under Joe Biden. Fox News' White House correspondent Peter Doocy grilled the administration yesterday on the president's recent praise of Qatar. That's another issue I want to get into. Watch this.
President Biden said, "I want to thank our partners in the region and particularly Qatar. The leader of Hamas lives in Qatar. So why is President Biden thanking them for anything?"
Oh, geez, Peter. Let's take a step back here and look at this.
Qatar was... They are a terrorist group that killed Americans and kidnapped Americans within the last month.
Peter, Qatar has been helpful in getting those Americans out. I'm sure you would agree with me, and everybody at your network would agree, that getting American hostages out is a good thing. And Qatar was a key player in that regard. Qatar has lines of communication with Hamas that almost nobody else has. Now, I'm not saying that we support Hamas. Of course we don't.
So, Cameron, your reaction to this in terms of the Qataris, are they complicit? Is Hamas not headquartered in Qatar?
So the Qataris have a difficult road right now. I think what we see is they're trying to play both sides. And that is never beneficial in the international stage of affairs. So they pride themselves on negotiating and reasoning with nation states like Iran, with groups like Hezbollah or Hamas or many others, or even Daesh in the past, ISIS. But that being said, this is a very, very unstable region. They should know this, and they're playing both sides here in a way that really shows, in my opinion, that they're willing to placate to more radical sentiments, which should put a huge amount of concern on Western powers such as the United States and many others that want to broker peace in that region.
Here's Todd Pyro. Go ahead, Todd.
Good to see you, Cameron. Look, is this diplomacy within the Middle East, or is this really an attempt by the Biden administration to stem the bleeding with the Muslim voters here in the United States, specifically in swing states, your Michigans, your Pennsylvanias and the like, ahead of 2024? Because Joe Biden, in the last 4 weeks, has fallen 40 points with that voting bloc.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is damage control on the political stage, where they're trying to placate to some of the more radical elements of the Democratic base right now. It's really a shame. We're seeing this robust rise of anti-Semitism in ways that are just almost unconscionable. It's something sentiment from very different time periods. And so what I think the president's comments and remarks are about is an attempt to garner some kind of support and or to retain some element of pacification of a very, very fringe aspect of his voting base. Unfortunately, that has impact on his foreign policy. We see that have direct impact on our public messaging, which only creates more confusion and instability in a region that needs resolve and courage.
Yeah, this is part of the problem, though. It's this focus on what is going to be best for the vote. Okay, how about just what is best for national security of America and not focus so much on what groups he's going to alienate and not alienate in terms of the election? The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the U.S. has intelligence that Russia's Wagner parliamentary group is planning to provide an air defense system to Iran-backed Hezbollah. The editorial board writes this: Republican critics of aiding Ukraine claim that there's no connection between Russia's aggression and the war in Israel. They're ignoring the major strategic development in the last year, which is the deepening military alliance between Russia and Iran that threatens U.S. interests. And Cameron, you might as well add China to that list, because you have a new axis of evil right now. The entire axis has been failed by the Biden administration. They have appeased Iran. They have allowed China to run right over the United States in whatever they want to do with their aggression. And now, of course, we also are dealing with a very aggressive Russia.
I think that's an excellent statement you made. What we've seen, even with Afghanistan, when we withdrew our troops there were Russian elements that were providing advice and oversight towards these Taliban fighters that were coming back and marching on Kabul. We had a plethora of information showing that that was happening at a rapid scale, even to the point where they were involved in a lot of airport security operations. We actually tried to appease some of the Taliban. And again, they were being propped up and pushed by these bad actors like you see in China, in Russia, among many others. So what these organizations and these states do is they find the power vacuum. The United States has been a significant broker of peace and also of strong foreign policy in that region. And now that there's a vacuum, now that there's a projected weakness, they're more than happy to insert themselves in a way so as to project more influence.
Yeah, China knows exactly what it's doing, that's for sure. Cameron, thanks for your insights. We appreciate you being here this morning.